to Cooper Talk.
Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guests. I gotta tell you something, people. Me and Joanne were talking the other day how when we were growing up, you could listen to all different kinds of music. Nothing was categorized. You could be listening to Southern rock, you could listen to rock, you could listen to new wave, you could listen to anything. And my guest today follows that because you know him from the band Tesla, but he has an album out called Reflections with a really cool video that I want to talk about. And he has had a lot of different influences in his life, which is always cool because I always respect musicians and I love how they pick out certain music and they learn it really good. And my guest is Frank Hannon. How you doing, Frank?
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, man. So
I'm doing pretty good, thank you.
Good. And you brought your guitar, which is really good. And I want to talk to you. Let's start off with the video, San Francisco, because it's cool. And when you were with Tesla, you guys made the videos back then, but this is just a psychedelic type video. And I heard that you've some influences of the Bay Area sound because that's where you're from. So tell me about the video, how you came up with the idea, the person who did it for you. Just tell me all about it because it's just cool. Like you watch it and it's just cool.
Wow, thanks, man. I was very lucky and honored to meet Chris Samardich from Brotherhood of Light Show. And he is involved with Brotherhood of Light Show, and they they were responsible for the original liquid oil shows of the 60s, dating back to the Monterey Pop Festival, which the Monterey Pop Festival was such a huge influence on me as a kid. My mom took me to see the movie when I was like 8 years old in like 1974 or 75 or something like that. And we went to a theater and I saw the video footage of Country Joe and the Fish and the Grateful Dead and Janis Joplin and all of that. And it just really influenced me as a young kid listening and wanting to learn to play guitar. And then, of course, there's the footage of Jimi Hendrix playing Wild Thing, from Monterey Pop. And that concert is a turning point in music, in my opinion. And so San Francisco is about an hour and a half west of where we live.
Why was it a turning point in your opinion?
Well, it was the summer of 1967, and up until that point, like music festivals weren't really a thing yet. Like Woodstock hadn't happened yet, and the era of the music had just come out of the 50s and the early 60s. Everything was still really safe and kind of music was, in my opinion, still kind of brand new, and the Beach Boys and things like that, a lot of vocal harmonies. But the Monterey Pop Festival was put together by the Mamas and Papas, and Paul McCartney had requested that they bring Jimi Hendrix back, because Jimi Hendrix had just moved to Europe and England, and that was his first show as an American artist coming back in America, was at the Monterey Pop Festival. So they made a movie out of it. And when I was a kid, I went to the theater and saw it. And let's see, because that was 1967. I think we saw it in 1976. So it was less than 10 years later, which is not that much later, really. But music had changed so much, even from 1967 to 1976. I know the sound of rock and roll and music was just on fire. It was growing and changing so much. I don't know. Do you pick up what I'm putting down here?
Oh, yeah, because there's always times that generations change and music changes. It's funny, it's like me and my wife just watched that Elvis documentary, and it was just weird watching how he changed. When he came on, everyone's like, Ed Sullivan, you can't shake your hips, up above, and it was just a changing of the guard, and I think so many people, it was where they were stuck. People were not stuck in the past, but like anything, people are afraid to change, especially when it's music. It happened when metal came out and punk came out. People were like, oh, yeah. No, but then the people who got it, and you seemed like you got it. And you had said San Francisco was an hour and a half from you, so that sound influenced you.
Big time. And as a youngster, I grew up in a home that was pretty wide open. There was parties all the time. This is the early '70s. My mom, she married a Mexican guy, Gabriel Martinez, and he loved Hank Williams and Johnny Cash, and Chuck Berry. He turned me on to Chuck Berry. My mom turned me on to Jimi Hendrix. My cousins and all the people that I was around, they were into funk, but it was like a melting pot. And San Francisco, and in the late '60s, was like a melting pot, and it was a big influence on me as a youngster, falling in love with guitar.
So you said earlier, you mentioned, I want to talk about the video. You mentioned that you met the guy who did all that liquid art. So how did you meet him, and then how did that become this video, which is off your album, but it's still, which is an instrumental album, which I want to talk about because I love that. I love that, as I said, my background is comedy. I can write a joke in a heartbeat. But when I hear a musician, I go, oh my God. When you hear someone who does something completely instrumental, you're like, whoa, it's just cool. Like I can't fathom even thinking of that. So how did you meet this guy, and how did the video come about?
Well, apart from Tesla, I've always done, solo projects and different things as a solo artist. And one of the cool opportunities I had was jamming with Devin Allman and Dwayne Betts, who also happens to be my brother-in-law. For 25 years. I've been married to Christy, his sister, for 25 years. And anyway, they do a thing called a family reunion show, the Allman Betts Family Revival. And I've been invited to jam with them a few times. And one of the events we did was at the Fillmore West in San Francisco. And their crew is amazing, the road crew. And their lighting designer is the fellow we're talking about, Chris, is sort of a legend in the liquid oil lighting show world. And he and I hit it off, and he got a kick out of me because I was really more of regarded as a rock guitarist from a rock band, Tesla. And in the group of guitar players that were jamming with the Allman Betts Family Revival at the time, I was really perceived as the rock guy. But when I started playing the blues, he came to me and goes, wow, man, you can play more than just rock. And I said, oh yeah, I love all styles of guitar, man. I dabble with jazz, blues, all the different elements. For me, music is like making a pizza. You can put all kinds of different ingredients on there to make your own flavor. And that's kind of what I do, And anyway, I met Chris on the Allman Betts Family Revival Tour, and he and I hit it off. And I sent him this mix of San Francisco because I thought he would like it. And I had the light bulb went off on having the authentic visual of that element for the video and this song. I just thought it would be a perfect fit. And you can always tell when something is meant to be because it'll happen effortlessly. Whether it's writing a song or recording or like when you're on stage telling a joke or something, it'll just flow, right? And the crowd will react and woo, and you just know when it's just automatic. That's how it was with Chris. I sent him the song, and like less than 2 hours later, he sent me these gorgeous images of the city with the Golden Gate Bridge and the psychedelic oil stuff that was created by Brotherhood of Light Show. And it went perfectly with the song. And I was like, yes, I love it. So it was a great synergy. And it was something that just flowed naturally, which is kind of how this whole record came about. I wasn't planning on making an instrumental album. I was just playing my guitar and recording it on my cell phone. And I discovered a little microphone that hooks up to the cell phone, Wi-Fi, and it has a great little app. And I created all 12 songs on my cell phone with that little microphone and my guitar and a bass.
Now,
And
okay,
it all came together.
I want to ask you because, well, you write music their whole life. You write for Tesla and stuff like that. When you're writing an instrumental song, you said it just came to you, but you have to make sure that they're all different. And that may sound odd, but there's so many. When you're playing guitar, when you start jamming, I'm sure a lot of times you get into a jam, as we said, you're comfortable with. Like comics will do the same act. We're comfortable with it. So when you're jamming, how do you sit there and all of a sudden sit there and go, you're not writing for Tesla. You're not thinking about the drums, the singing, the lyrics. You're thinking about you and your guitar. And you don't want to be redundant, which for someone as a guitarist, you wouldn't be. But for someone from the outside like me, we would think, we were very how many different students? So what do you sat down and you started playing with your cell phone, and all of a sudden, about a minute and a half in, you go, well, this could be a song. How do you decide which way to take it?
Well, that's a great question, and it doesn't happen all the time. It happens in bursts, and sometimes you have to be aware of it. And I read somewhere, or I listened somewhere a long time ago to an interview. Tom Petty, being the songwriter he is, said that he'll receive an idea, and he has to be aware of when it happens, and you have to document it. So luckily on the phone, there's voice memo, and there's really quick ways. Back in the old days, we had a ghetto blaster, and we hit record real quick, on a cassette. But for this particular project, it was really depending on the mood that I was feeling, and I could hear things in my head, and it'll usually come at a mundane time. Like my wife and I were taking a walk around the neighborhood trying to get some exercise one afternoon, and all of a sudden it just started sprinkling, and then there was some lightning, and then it just started really downpouring on us. And so we started walking fast, and while we were walking, I was hearing this rhythm. I was feeling that beat. So that was going in my mind while we were walking. And so my wife is talking to me, but I'm over here thinking about this chord and this rhythm. And so I said, honey, I've got to go. I got to record this thing really quick before I forget it. And she was being really supportive, and I went into the bedroom and with my little thing there, and I recorded this. And I just started imagining what the lead part would be, and I wanted it to sound like a conversation. So I wanted it to enter the room like, here I am.
Right.
In from the rain, I'm soaking wet, like little phrases, So it just came kind of automatically, and the art form of recording yourself is so important to learn. I feel very blessed that I learned it early on with a 4-track cassette deck when I was a teenager. I got one for my birthday one year and hit record and play some stuff and then listen back to it. And 9 times out of 10, it's just accidental, and you capture it and then you listen back to it and you go, this is pretty good. And then other times, oh, this sucks, man. I'm not going to pursue this. But if you're lucky and you're on a roll, you can get on a creative roll, and every day you can capture a different mood or a feeling of something that happens to you while you're walking in the rain or mowing the lawn or whatever, That's kind of how it come together.
Now, you mentioned earlier how you play rock, you play jazz, you play blues. As in a technical point, is there different ways? Like, you can play a metal guitar solo and you can play something jazzy. Do you approach it the same way in the technical part, or is it something that there's a different technique for jazz, there's a different technique for blues? I mean, how does that work for someone like you who plays so many different genres?
Well, the ultimate goal is to make it your own and make it your own voice. And I have a limited ability. I'm a very simple minded player, and I love simplicity. But I like to dabble with jazz because there's a lot of information there to learn from. Like, jazz players will play chords more like up. Jazz players will use more of the high strings, and they call that jazz. They call it melody. So you play a chord, and you add those high notes to it. Whereas blues and rock is more down on the low, more in the low range. So that's what I like to learn is those things that are in those different styles, but I'll just grab bits and pieces of it to make my own, because there's no way, I think, in my lifetime that I'm ever going to be able to play guitar as fluent as Joe Pass, or Wes Montgomery. I mean, those guys are masters at that one thing. But I like to learn from those and pull those elements. And like, I discovered, like, if I'm in the key of whatever key, there's a note. It's the sixth note of the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That one. So I've learned through learning jazz or blues that sixth note it's a really good note, and it's always in my back pocket. And if I'm playing with somebody and we're jamming and I happen to pull out that sixth note and throw it in there, usually it turns a head. It's like I'm sure you have some one-liners in your show that that they're gonna grab the crowd and make them laugh.
Right. Yeah.
So as a guitar player, you learn there's certain little notes that are gonna make people go, "What?"
Okay.
And make them turn their head like a dog, like, "Whoa, what was that?" Like, here's one. It's like, what is that going on?
Right.
Those odd notes that make you go,
See, that's what's cool. Now, I got to ask you, as someone who grew up loving music, your father-in-law was Dickie Betts. So, how'd you meet his daughter, and what was it like? Like, is that intimidating when you meet someone who's such a legend? I mean, it's like the guy's a guitar legend. How did you meet his daughter, and did you know it was Dickie Betts' daughter when you met her?
Well, we met at the Charlotte, North Carolina City Festival, and I was on tour, and I had, gone through a really long, painful divorce, and I was recently single, and had no intention on meeting anybody or getting involved with anybody. And after what I had been through, and it just so happened the first night of the tour, God said, "Here you go," bam, and He gave me the greatest gift of my life, which was Christy. She's been an angel, and her dad being a guitar player definitely helps our compatibility because she understands my personality and understands the lifestyle of traveling and working as a musician. I didn't really know too much about Dickie at that time. I mean, of course, I'd heard his name and I knew who he was, but I wasn't really a super fan until I got to know him and really started studying what he did. But she was introduced to me by my drummer in Tesla, Troy. He had met her and came to me and said, "I've got to introduce you to Christy." And we started talking on the phone for a couple months before we ever dated and became best friends. And I got to know Dickie on the phone. I'm kind of old-fashioned. And I called him, and I wanted him to know that I was a good guy. I wasn't just going to, break his daughter's heart. And he respected that about me. He goes, "Man, I like you, and I like that you did that, and let's get together." So we flew to Las Vegas, to hang out with Dickie and a band called Mo that he was jamming with. And we were there for the weekend, and we jammed in the hotel, and Dickie was just playing this amazing guitar and singing and yodeling, and then he would pass me the guitar, and I was just all bashful and intimidated, and he gave me a punch in the shoulder. Bam! You better start singing, man. Let me hear you sing. And I at that point, I had no confidence in singing. And so it was Dickie that really gave me a lot of confidence in the importance of singing and being, not just being a guitar player, but actually trying to do some songwriting and singing. And so shortly after that, I recorded one of my solo albums. It's called Gypsy Highway. And it was influenced by the motivation that he gave me to be a singer. And I'm still working on it. I'm still not a confident singer at all, but it doesn't matter. You just got to go for it and go for it. And that was the other thing he told me, is you got to keep on swinging and just keep on keeping on.
So, how do you try to become a better singer? Do you practice? Do you, like you said, the guitar? When you were younger, you record yourself and then you listen. Do you do the same thing with singing? Do you record yourself and go back and say, man, I really hit those notes, or, oh, man, I really missed that? How do you improve as a singer?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question, and it's so true. I never did that as a young guitarist. I only focused on guitar and recording, because Tesla has always, and still do, we have a great lead singer who's got a naturally gifted voice. And in the studio, I would record him, and it would be automatic. He just sing anything, and it would sound great. And there's some other singers that I've recorded in the past. You can tell when they just got that gift. They can just sing automatically. Whereas for me, yes, I have to work on it and experiment. So I asked Dickie that question, how do you do it? And he told me, just like you were saying, just like on the guitar, if you're going to learn a guitar lick, maybe it's a B.B. King lick, or you're going to learn maybe a Van Halen lick, you're going to learn those licks. So the way to learn and get better singing is to learn some singers and pick the ones that feel the best. So like if you want to sing like Bruce Springsteen, you can sing like that. Or, B.B. King, the thrill is gone. You emulate other singers and learn other songs. And that's the other thing, is a lot of musicians are too proud to learn covers and cover tunes, and learning other tried and true proven songs that are great, and you learn those and you practice those. Again, you can develop your own sound by learning those. And that's what the Beatles did. I mean, they were covering Buddy Holly and Chuck Berry, and Jimi Hendrix was covering Bob Dylan. So there's nothing wrong with doing cover tunes. And so following that advice on my solo career, I did 2 covers albums. They're called From One Place to Another. And they're all out on Spotify and iTunes, So if anybody's bored after they watch this interview, they can go check them out. From One Place to Another, and Gypsy Highway, and my new album, Reflections.
So when did this all, you mentioned earlier you were listening to, Let's See Monterey Pop, and then you got a peak in interest. When did you first pick up the guitar, and when did you know that you were good at it? Because, I picked up the guitar when I was young, and I sucked. I had Guitar Lab in high school, and I said, what, this isn't for me. But when did you pick it up and know you were good, and when did you get your first semblance of a band together?
Well, this was in the 70s, and 1976, and Jimi Hendrix and the Monterey Pop movie was really something that really sparked my interest. And I was 10 years old, and like every other 10-year-old kid, I was riding BMX bikes and trying to play sports and getting in fights and doing all this crazy stuff in our neighborhood. And none of it really felt natural to me and very good. And I had a dirt bike, and I got into a wreck. and I broke my knee when I was 11, and it was painful. And I was in a cast, and I was laid up for that whole summer of 1977. But I had started mowing lawns and saving my money, and I had a turntable, and I had a pretty good little record collection. Plus, my older cousins had some great records. I mean, this is when Frampton Comes Alive and Rick Derringer, and Aerosmith and Ted Nugent and all these great rock and roll bands that were so guitar driven were on the radio, and the vinyl albums were out at that time. And so I was laid up with my broken leg, just elevated on the couch and just listening to records. And there was a beat up old acoustic guitar there in the living room that my stepdad had, and I would just, with my broken leg, lay there with the acoustic and listen to vinyl albums, because I couldn't do anything for months with that broken leg. Once I got out of my cast and was on crutches, my grandma saw that I had really taken an interest in guitar, and so she gave me a ride to a music store, and I had saved up money before I broke my leg from mowing lawns, and I had about $100, and she matched my $100, a really cheap electric guitar. And boy, I was hooked. And it just, for some reason, after listening to vinyl records so much, I was able to start copying, Ted Nugent licks and stuff from listening to them so much by ear. It was kind of became ingrained. And those riffs seemed to come very easy to me as an 11-year-old kid. A lot more easier than playing basketball or getting in fights, which I hated doing. All the other kids wanted to fight all the time. I didn't want to do that. I wanted, I'm a softie. I wanted to play guitar. Right. And so that's what I gravitated and discovered at 11. And then by the time I was 12 years old, there were some other kids that played drums in the neighborhood, and we started making our own little backyard gigs and setting up hay bales in the front yard and making stages and jamming and learning and jamming and trying to learn songs. And one thing led to another. By the time I was 15, well, my first gig was at the Moose Lodge when I was 12, but by the time I was 15, I was already playing the bars and playing the clubs with Brian Wheat, bass player of Tesla. He and I have been together since I was 15 years old. He was 18, and we stuck it out and got a record contract. By the time I was 19, we had a manager, and we just worked and worked and worked and worked at it. One thing led to another.
So how did Tesla start getting popular? How does a band do that? Like, in the Philadelphia area, there was a bar, in New Jersey where I'm from, there was a place called the Galaxy. And the Galaxy, Bon Jovi played there. And then it was Cinderella, and then Britney Fox and Heaven's Edge. And it was a place where people went. And at the time when, metal and hair and hard rock all started blowing up, people were out looking for...
Yeah, the early 80s.
Yeah, they were looking for bands. So they came to New Jersey, and they found these guys. And it's like, it was a different thing. For you, what was it like for you guys when you first got together, getting a record deal? Was it easy? Because I've heard stories where it was like this, snap easy, or it was hard as hell?
Oh, it was hard as hell. It was the same thing as what you're talking about. There was night clubs, and we would play those, and we had to learn cover tunes, top 40 they called it. But we would mix in our original ideas. But we had a manager who booked 4 other local bands, and we were the young ones in comparison. And so we would always be the opening band, opening for these other bands that were higher up on the club level in our hometown. And we would drive to L.A., we would drive to Boise, Idaho, with the help of a guy named Steve Klausman, who was a manager. He was really driven. He was a race car driver, and he was like our drill sergeant. And we had our group, and this is in the early 80s, when pop music, Loverboy, Journey, all of that was going. but we were writing rock songs and mixing them in. We were playing AC/DC, but we were also writing our own AC/DC sounding kind of originals. Like on Tesla's first album, there's a song called Easy Come, Easy Go, and it's a rocker because we were playing, you know, early Def Leppard and Scorpions and that stuff of the time frame in the early 80s. And one thing would lead to another, but it was constant, like, late nights driving. And I left school early. I got a test, and I left school as a sophomore because I was already so hell-bent on playing guitar with this older crowd and these guys that wanted to make it. And specifically, our manager was driven and to get us signed to a record contract. So we got discovered by Ronnie Montrose, who was a local guitar legend hero who played with Sammy Hagar. Are you familiar with Ronnie Montrose? Yeah. And he started making demo tapes for us in the studio and coaching us. And the manager and Ronnie Montrose bought me a 4-track cassette recorder for my birthday. And I believe that is the difference when you're a musician in a young band. Learning how to record your own demos is so important for learning how to write songs and how to listen to what you're doing. So I started making the 4-track demos for the band, and I got hooked on it. I started buying microphones. I started saving my money and buying a little mixer, a little PV mixer, and bringing it to band practice and recording the band, getting our singer to come over and write lyrics and create demo tapes that you could pass around. So, you know, I read an interview with Joan Jett. She kind of did the same thing. She had her demo tapes in the trunk of her car, and she would pass them around to people, you know. That was the thing, is sharing the music and getting the word out by passing around demo tapes. And that's what we did as a local band, playing and opening. Just like you said, those guys in Jersey, you know, there was Brittany Fox and Bon Jovi. They were all playing together in the clubs. Yeah, we did the same thing. And we got turned down a lot. We got turned down by producers. We got discovered after Ronnie Montrose by Teresa Ensenat and Tom Zutaut from Elektra Records, and they had just signed Motley Crue, and they came out to a gig and saw us and started trying to get us hooked up with a producer, and we got turned down by Mutt Lange and Bruce Fairbairn and Max Norman, all these producers, until finally, after a year and a half of making more demos, Steve Thompson and Michael Barbiero decided they would produce us, and they took us to New York, and the rest is history.
What is it like when you finally knew you had a producer? Is it just, I mean, the thing is, you put the hard work in. That's what a lot of people don't get. It's not overnight. You know, you guys, as you said, there's rejection. Yes, some people get that break right away. Like, I interview a lot of actors, you know. One guy will get a TV series on his first shot, but a lot of them were in pilots that were canceled. We're in this and this. So it's not overnight, but everyone says they're an overnight success. But what is it a feeling of such accomplishment when you finally know you got a producer to go in the studio, or are you still nervous because you know you have to produce now?
No, I was still very nervous. I mean, I was only 18, and then by the time, you know, the other guys were in their 20s. So I was the youngest guy in the band, but I was still very active in writing and creating the music. But I was a shy, nervous kind of kid, and so to go to New York and go to this amazing studio called Bearsville, it didn't happen overnight. Again, we were there for 3 months, and for half of that time, we were living in a barn, making more demo tapes and trying to create the level before we even went into the studio of songs that the producers were going to be satisfied with. So it was a constant challenge, and it wasn't never like, okay, hey, we're ready to go, let's just throw it together. No, it was a lot of work developing it, and it was kind of intimidating for a 19-year-old kid, you know, I have to be honest. And so much so that when the sessions were over, there was one little guitar piece that I wanted to add to the record, and the engineer whispered in my ear, he said, go home on that little 4-track that you have, record it, and mail it to me, and I'll put it on the album. So I did, and it ended up on the first album, a little acoustic solo that I did at home.
See, that's awesome. So now the album comes out, and now when do you start getting to tour with people? Because that also, for you being a young guy, I mean, and once again, you're 18, you're 19. A lot of the guys are older, so it's a whole different dynamic. I mean, the age difference between 18 and 22 may sound like 4 years, but maturity-wise and just life experience, it's so much more. So when do you guys start clicking where the label says, we're going to send you out on the road?
Well, we got very lucky. So on top of the hard work and all of those hurdles that we had to work over, we did have some very lucky breaks in meeting some very wise, influential people. So Tom Zutot and Teresa Ensenat with the record company and the producers and all of them, we created this record. During that time, we got introduced to a wise manager named Cliff Bernstein. And Cliff Bernstein managed Rush and AC/DC and Metallica, Def Leppard, along with Peter Minch. And they had a company called Q Prime. And they took a liking to us, and they took us under their wing. And that was a very lucky break for us because they made the decision to not just throw us out there on a tour. They wanted to wait. And so our first record had come out, and we made a video for Modern Day Cowboy. It was on MTV Headbangers Ball for 6 months, and our song was in heavy rotation on the radio, but we weren't on tour. So I was still working a job, taking trash out for this construction company and picking up garbage and making minimum wage, and our song would be on the radio. But because of their wisdom, they waited until we got a really big break. And that big break came for opening for David Lee Roth at the Meadowlands on his Eat 'Em and Smile tour. And this is when Yankee Rose and David Lee Roth was like Elvis, man. He was so big at the time. And we went out on tour with him for 3 months and opened for him all through the Midwest. And we got perceived as Tesla, the opening band in arenas. And it really set us up to build our fan base in the Midwest as a young opening band. And then we went straight from that to opening for Poison, Great White, Alice Cooper, Def Leppard. We became America's opening band. You know, we supported everybody for several years before we ended up headlining our own arena tour.
So when you first started opening in the arenas for David Lee Roth, you know, you guys are not tried and tested in an arena. It's a whole different area. So from how long till you really started feeling you were getting the groove of playing in an arena? Because it's got to be different. I mean, you're going out, and I remember back then, you know, concerts back then, people were throwing Frisbees, and they had lighters, and people, you know, a lot of us would I would always listen to the opening act, but some people would come in late. But all of a sudden you have to adjust to this. It's not like you're playing in a bar. So how long did it take you to get adjusted? Then how long do you really think till you got the momentum and really got the feel?
It really didn't take long because we had been an opening band since the beginning, opening for a lot of shows in our hometown. We would open for Eddie Money. We had opened for, we became a house band at this club that had a lot of national acts. So we were very driven and hungry and had developed a knack for being able to open up for any rock show and kick ass. That was we were going out there to kick ass. That was our motto. The arenas, the difference was the stages were so much bigger and the sound was so much more open that we had to learn to slow down and take a breath a little bit, you know. But it didn't take us long at all. It came quite naturally for us because, like I was saying, we had been an opening band for many years.
So you must have been so cohesive at that time. Now, you mentioned you were taking garbage out and hearing your song on the radio and stuff like that. Do you remember the first time you heard one of your songs on the radio?
Yes, there was a local DJ that played Modern Day Cowboy on our local hometown station, and yeah, I'll never forget it. It was really cool. The FM radio stations back then, they had the compression on their sound waves, and when it just sounded different. It sounded different coming through my car on the radio than I had ever heard it. Yeah, it was something I'll never forget.
Now, as you're playing with Tesla, are you still trying to create the other music you love? I mean, or were you just focused on playing the hard rock, the metal, or were you sitting there when you were by yourself?
No, Tesla's a very diverse band, and everything that I talked about earlier of all the different elements, I've always thrown that into Tesla. Like if you listen to a hard rock song like Modern Day Cowboy, I have acoustic layers that I put in there, like picking and a little classical sound in there. In the song "What You Give," I added a Telecaster with some country bends and some clean Fender twangy tones in there. So I love the songs that I've written with Tesla, and we're still very active. We're going out on tour later in the year, and we're putting out a tribute album of R&B songs. And so it's really different for Tesla. It's called Homage, and it showcases our singers' ability to cover Sam Cooke and Etta James and the band as well. We do James Brown. So we're still having a lot of fun with Tesla and a lot of fun as a solo artist, being creative.
Now, how do you choose the songs for that tribute album? How do you, because there's so many songs, and you know your music very well. I mean, there's so many different tunes. How do you pick what's going to be on? And then does everyone have to agree with it in the band? I mean, it's a very cool concept.
Well, yeah, Brian Wheat was very instrumental in the concept of this particular one. And we've done covers albums before, like Reel to Reel and our 5-man acoustic jam album. Between Brian and myself and Jeff Keith, we would come up with ideas, and ultimately it comes down to singing. And if Jeff felt good to him singing the song, and if he got lit up and excited about it, then 99% of the time it was a keeper. For example, the song Signs, when we did that song, Jeff loved the lyrics so much, and we sang it, and it just came automatic. Like I told you earlier, if it comes automatically, it usually means it's meant to be. And so with Tesla, if one of us gets an idea for a cover tune or even an original song, and we present it to Jeff, our singer, and if he lights up and gets excited about it, then it's usually going to happen.
Now, how often do you still practice all the time, or when you practice your writing? Like you said, when you took that walk, you came in and you had an idea for a song. So that's technically, it's not practice, it's your influence. But do you sit down and practice and play? I mean, what is your day like? Because you've been playing for so long, and you said you guys go on tour a lot. So do you practice still?
As I've gotten older, I've gotten back to practicing. When I was a young kid, I practiced and played nonstop all the time. And then as life goes on and you got responsibilities, you start taking it for granted. But now, the past couple years, I've been really focusing on dedicating time to keeping my fingers limber and practicing and learning a new song, learning a new style of something. And yes, I do. I try to dedicate time and manage my time, because now that I'm 60 years old, I'll be 60 this year, I realize how limited and how valuable the hours are in the day. So I try to plan my time and spend it wisely, and at least 2 hours a day dedicating to playing music and playing guitar.
Now, your band has been together for a long time with Tesla. I know you guys broke up for a little bit.
40 years we're celebrating this year.
So
40 years.
You've been together for 40 years, okay? And I know you recently played in Atlantic City, which is about an hour from me, and you guys tour a lot. What is it that has kept you together? Because so many bands break up, or you see bands now, there's like one member, or there's not even some bands, there's no original members. So what is it that, first of all, what is it? Is it your chemistry, and what is it with the fans? Are you dedicated to the fans? Because what I love about bands, like when you say 40 years, when you do a show, there's going to be grandparents, parents, and kids. That's what's cool to me. Like you probably see some 8-year-old kids with a Tesla shirt, and then their parents have it, then their grandparents have it. So
yeah, 4 generations, 40 years. Well, what keeps us together is we've experienced the breakups, we've experienced the hardships. We came from very humble beginnings, South Sacramento, taking trash out for a job. We've been very humble and always have been very humble, and we're very grateful. We've been at the top and we've been at the bottom. So when you've experienced those things, you really learn to not take it for granted, and you learn to be grateful. And the fact that Tesla can do a concert and I can still play something that I wrote when I was 17, and the crowd goes, ah, and they love it. That's just such a blessing, and I'm so lucky that they still love the music, and it makes them feel good. So it's a combination of everything you said. It's the appreciation of the loyalty of the fans. It's the appreciation of each other, especially Brian, Jeff, and myself. The 3 of us, the core members of the group, have endured a lot of ups and downs, and we've been through the hard times, and so we don't want to go back there. So we cherish what we got and we stick it out.
now you said you're going to be 60. When you look back, how has your songwriting changed? Because you're not writing this. You can still play the same song when you're 17, but you played it when you're 17. But through the years, you're right. How have you grown as a writer? And do you think you've grown a lot, or do you want to grow more?
Well, hopefully, continually, always growing until just always learning and growing. I'm not trying so hard anymore, and because I'm not trying to write songs, when you don't try, then that's when it happens. It's weird. It's such a weird dichotomy. It seems like that's the way it is in life with a lot of things. Don't try to fabricate and try to force things to happen. And if you don't do that and you just let go, then all of a sudden you let go and let it flow. And I'm just kind of taking my time a lot more now, where I'm not in such a rush to prove a point. Not trying to prove anything, just trying to keep it as real as possible, and whatever the real feeling is at the time for an idea for a song, just keeping it real. Someone asked me, are you threatened by AI? I'm like, no, man. In fact, AI is doing me a favor, because now I can keep it even more less perfect. And, the last thing I want to do is have it sound too perfect,
Well, I always laugh. AI will never take the creativity out of it. AI can tune it up, but the creativity is always like with writing, any kind of writing or music, it still comes from a soul. It doesn't come from a machine. Now, you're right. You can sit there, if you write a letter,
Yeah.
and you can sit there and it can make it sound right, but the letter is still your idea. Or for you playing, it might be able to sharpen up, but it's still you.
Yeah, I would rather hear a guitar by itself with some mistakes and hear the feeling of it than some AI-generated fake something,
So I got to ask you 2 things before we go. One, have you ever been frustrated and wanted to walk away from the business? Or is it just, you've had great success. You said you have the ups and downs. But was ever a point in your life where you said, I just can't do this shit anymore? I can't. Has it ever happened to you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't be human if that didn't happen, It's like a marriage being in a band, with guys and with people. And there's always going to be some challenging times. And, leaving home is always challenging, man, and hard to do when you finally just get settled in, and then, oh, man, I got to catch a flight. I got to be at the airport at 6, which means I have to be up at 3 and out the door by 4 in the morning. And, you just, that sometimes can get really old. The 90 minutes on stage is the best part of the whole thing, but the other 23 hours of traveling and, living in a Walmart parking lot is very trying, and sometimes you do want to hang it up. But then you get on stage and you play your songs and you get the fans making them feel good, they make you feel good, then you forget all about that stuff.
What do you think is your high point of your career? For you personally, what was the high point of your career? What, was it the first record deal? Was it hearing yourself on the radio? Was it playing a huge venue? What was a high point to you that you sit there and reflect and go, wow, man, I've made it?
Well, there was a lot of different high points for Tesla. At the time, I didn't even fathom or realize they were happening as high points. Texas Jam of '87, when we did a show with Boston and Aerosmith at the Cotton Bowl in front of 90,000 people. I mean, that was definitely a high point. And getting to meet Steven Tyler and Joe Perry and Brad Delp from Boston at a dinner, having dinner with them. I mean, stuff like that, meeting your heroes. I got to meet Paul McCartney one time, jamming with Leonard Skinner and having Gary Rosington kick me in the ass and tell me to bust out the solo on Call Me the Breeze in Atlanta, Georgia. And when we were opening for them, that was a high point, a lot of low points too, like Grace Slick, one of her quotes is, when it's good in the music business, it's the best, it's great. But when it's bad, it's as low as it can feel, When we broke up and were all strung out and everybody hated each other and lawyers were involved and all that, those are the low points. But a lot of high points, those shows and events that I just talked about. But to be honest with you, right now, not to be cliche, but making this album, Reflections, is a high point for me right now because creatively, I've discovered ways of playing guitar on this record that really I'm proud of. And if you can make a piece of work as an artist that you feel good about, and then you share it with people and they feel good about it, then that is an ultimate high right there. That's really, really the most rewarding high point you can have as a creator. To create something that, first off, you believe in it, and then your friends are feeling that. I don't care if it sold 10 copies or 1 million, doesn't matter. The few people that matter to me that have heard it really genuinely appreciate it, and that is a reward to me.
What is your favorite song off your album, the new one, Reflections?
Well, Walk in the Rain, it has a special place for me because of it triggered the whole process. But San Francisco, I have to say, is probably my favorite track on the record, and which is why I re-released it. Because this record came out last year, September, and over the holidays I put out a different piece of music, did Green Sleeves. But I wanted to bring focus back to this Reflections album because it hadn't quite, all the songs hadn't quite got put out that I wanted to put out. And San Francisco was one that I really wanted to put out. So San Francisco is probably one of my favorite tracks on the record because of the way it came about just so spontaneously. And it really shows the creativity of my influences.
Well, that's awesome, and this has been awesome. I usually ask my guests the final question is, what are you proud of? But I know right now you're most proud of this new album. Well, since September we bring it out, and it is great. And it's something that I, as I said, I always sit there when you listen to something that's all guitar, and you have to appreciate it. That's the thing. When you listen to it, you just appreciate it, and there's artistry behind it, and that's what people don't get. It's not just some guy picking up a guitar and jamming. It's a guy who's thinking out what's going on, and then, of course, jamming.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's definitely real from my heart, and it's really raw, and it's genuine, and it came spontaneously, and I'm very, very happy with it. If it's the last thing I ever did, I'd be happy with it. So there you go.
So how can people find the album? I know your website, frankhannon.com, has all info on it, but how can people get the album?
Well, they can come to my shows. I'm doing a Dallas International Guitar Festival, May 1st through the 3rd in Dallas, Texas. It's a great guitar festival, 3 days of nothing but guitar. I'll have the album there. frankhannon.com, that's Hannon, frankhannon.com, and you can order it. Talk Shop Live is selling it. But you have to come to a show, or you can order it from my website.
So people, go check it out. It's really good. You'll love it. And also, Tesla's coming up on the tour. Also, go check out Tesla. Just go check out Frank's website. Check out Tesla's website. Go to my website, coopertalk.net. You can find 1,062 episodes on there. You can email me at cooper@coopertalk.net. So remember, I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guests. Don't forget to drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins. And before I talk to you sometime, give me a quick riff to get off the air, Frank. Give me a little guitar riff.
All right. Yeah, this has been Cooper Talk.
All right.
Peace out.
Thank you, Frank. Everyone have a great night. I appreciate you.